So, welcome back to Everything Marketplaces, where we talk with founders and leaders from some of today's top marketplaces. So, this is episode 165, which is a really incredible group chat that we just had with Steve Kaufer, who's a co founder and former CEO of Tripadvisor. So, Tripadvisor is, of course, a marketplace that we all know of today, since it's one of the largest travel marketplaces with over 1 billion reviews on this platform. So, this is a really great chat with Steve, where we start off by going back to the founding story for Tripadvisor, what the first steps were that they took to start it as a travel site at the time, got to learn about some of the early challenges that they face. Steve walked us through how it evolved as it scaled to being one of the largest travel sites. He shared some of his biggest learnings now looking back. We also had a great group Q&A. I really enjoyed this conversation, and you're going to find it a great watch to the end. So, Steve, welcome to the group chat, and this is a real treat to have you join us here today. So, I wanted to start off by saying, huge thanks for taking the time to do so in advance. So, we have a lot that we're going to chat about with all of your incredible experience starting and scaling at TripAdvisor. But before we do, I think it might be great if you can start off by briefly sharing your background for those that don't know you.
Sure. More than happy to. Computer science grad in 1984, way long time ago. Started a software development tool company right out of college. Made a boatload of, had a lot of success, made a boatload of mistakes, managed to sell the company before it went bankrupt. So got to see the going up to about 20 million revenue, as well as the slide down. Taught me a lot of interesting lessons, most of which I managed to avoid in the next company. Tripadvisor started in 2000, co-founded with a bunch of kind of friends from past lives, raised a little bit of money, hit the market with beautiful timing. Happy to go into more of the Tripadvisor story, but I really only had just a couple of jobs in my life. Again, computer science degree, I think, helped me along the way, and luck and timing did a lot. And now I'm on to Give Freely, which we'll probably talk about a little bit later.
Yeah, no, that's a really great background. Of course, so much we're going to get into here. But of course, TripAdvisor is a name that we all know today. But if we go back to the very beginning, what was the founding story for TripAdvisor, and what were the first steps that you took to start it at the time?
I had spent like 15 years in a software development tool company. Lots of fun. Didn't work out at the end. And my one goal was to do another company, because I'd gotten the entrepreneurial bug, that wasn't software development tools. I didn't know about travel, but why not? It was a good idea. The idea actually came from the very personal experience. I was planning a trip to Mexico with my wife, went to a travel agent. They recommended 3 different hotels. The pictures all looked beautiful, inexpensive, moderate priced, very expensive. And I'm like, let's stay at the cheap one, dear. And my wife said, hey, why don't you check the internet, that newfangled thing that was coming out, to see if you could find more information than just the pictures. I did. It was very hard to do, but I found information about that cheap hotel that was, made it very clear this was not going to work for us. The pictures were of the front of the hotel. The story I tell is, hey, and I got pictures of the back of the hotel, and the beach wasn't quite as nice, and the chairs weren't quite as nice. We upgraded ourselves to the mid-level, went on the trip, had a great time, and my wife said afterwards, hey, that research saved our vacation. Maybe you could build in your new company a site that could help people have great vacations. And I said, nah, that's too hard to figure out how to make money out of it. Forget it. But a year later, that was still the best idea that I had heard of, and embarked with the team, raised a small amount of money, and got started.
Yeah, no, that's a really cool founding story to kind of, go back to the beginning. So, with those kind of first steps for starting, how did you kind of get the initial kind of traffic to kind of leave ratings and reviews and kind of really get the flywheel started?
Yeah, so the beginning, if you looked at the original business plan for TripAdvisor, we were a B2B company. We were going to be selling this database of information about where to stay, where to go, what to do, where to eat, to all the other travel players, because we would focus on crawling the web to find the best possible information. Because my problem when I searched on Google or Yahoo or Alta Vista at the time, and I searched for a hotel name. They were all crap. They were all travel agents offering me to make a reservation at this hotel. When I searched for a city, I got weather, I got real estate, I got maybe a little travel. I got nothing to help a person planning a vacation there. And so the goal was build that technology, stay a small B2B company, license it to Expedia and AOL Travel and Lycos and Yahoo and American Airlines and all the travel companies out there. We built that as a beta site, launched it. We started in February, launched it in October as just a beta site. And since we didn't have user reviews, the site had links to articles from newspapers or magazines or just on the web that we had found and had manually tagged to be relevant to the city, this hotel, this attraction, that sort of thing. Fast forward a year later, we still couldn't find any clients. None of these B2B players were willing to pay us money kind of per search. We eventually landed a client, Lycos. It was like the number 3 portal on the planet at that time, also in our backyard here in Boston. We powered most of their travel section. And to make the long story short, we earned nothing. The partnership, which gave us 50% of the rev share on those pages, 50% of nothing is still nothing. And so we were about to go out of business. We made the pivot to, hey, let's take our beta.tripadvisor or demo.tripadvisor and turn it to www and see what kind of traffic we could get, which we got through search engines and a little PR. And I can go into the search engine piece if you want, but hey, we were a site that had pages. We were open to search engines, and the Expedias and other big travel sites were all behind a database, so they weren't crawlable. And so we had an absolute first mover advantage. We leaned into SEO heavily, got a lot of traffic. So if you search for a hotel name, odds are you would find TripAdvisor in the top of the list. So we grew it a lot on the basis of free traffic acquisition and a good product. So Google was good at recognizing low bounce rate, high engagement, and then we did link building and the rest of the SEO game.
Now, that's a really cool to learn more about. I'm sure we'll get some questions about SEO and kind of link building in the group Q&A. But I guess, reviews are now, core to marketplaces. But, TripAdvisor was kind of early in that. So, how did you first, I guess, start with kind of aggregating reviews and then really prompt people to kind of lead reviews and kind of get that critical mass with them?
Yeah, so it's a particular challenge when you go to a site that's all about reviews of software products or whatever, and you look and like, it's got none or it's got one. And so I've been involved in a couple of marketplace companies, TripAdvisor, obviously, Glassdoor is another marketplace for comments on your employer, Car Gurus, another, used car reviews, etc. So with TripAdvisor, we solved that problem a little bit accidentally in the beginning because we would crawl guidebooks like Fedora's or Frommer's or Lonely Planet, things that some of you may not ever heard of, but that's how we used to travel with that guidebook. And those were very structured sites, thank you. We wouldn't take their content, we would take the title of the page and then link over. But that meant if you landed on the Marriott Marquis in New York City, we actually had 2 or 3 references that talk specifically about that hotel because it was a pretty popular one. So we had a good enough value proposition to make the traffic stick to our site. And then on a whim, the whim's the wrong word, because we believed in quickly testing new ideas, somebody whose name is actually unknown in TripAdvisor lore said, hey, why not let people write their own reviews? And people like me thought, that's a dumb idea. I'd much rather trust fedoras or a real travel writer that's seen 100 hotels than Aunt Susie, who's never traveled in her life and writes one review. But in our philosophy of test, see if it works, we put the button up. And sure enough, a percentage of our traffic wanted to write their own review, which raised the second concern: is who would take the time to write a review unless they had a complaint? And the last thing we wanted to be was a site that everyone was dumping terrible travel stories. We were supposed to be an inspirational site, helping you plan a great trip, not just avoiding terrible hotels or cities. Net average review was always on a 5-point scale, was always above 4. People really liked sharing their experiences. And so we added the button, people clicked, they wrote good reviews. We thoroughly vetted them, read them, made sure the person was a real person, then posted. We automated that later on. But the asking, and then there's some growth hacks about thanking people for writing the review, showing them how many times people read their review, giving them a badge if they wrote 3 reviews. This was like an astonishing, at the time, growth hack of like, let's create a badge system, give people a senior restaurant reviewer when they wrote their 3rd review for restaurants, because we wanted more and more. Google loved our fresh content. We wanted more reviews. You were part of the community. Lots of reasons to collect the reviews. And sure enough, when we sent out the email that said, you're only 2 reviews away from your senior reviewer badge, that generated way more reviews. Wow. Meant nothing. Like, we put a little badge next to your avatar. Like, it wasn't worth any points. It wasn't rewarding, but it was a little bit of fame. It was a tap on the back. It was a thank you. And that was one of the many mechanisms that helped our reviews skyrocket. Note, if you're collecting reviews, nobody ever wanted to write a review to help TripAdvisor. People wanted to write a review to help their fellow travelers, to pay it forward. When we changed our language, seems obvious now, but when we changed our language to like help your fellow traveler, that dramatically improved the reviews rather than please write a review for us.
And I believe you have over a billion reviews on TripAdvisor today.
Yep, over 1 billion and still growing at a staggering rate. And the company, could clearly do more if they wanted to collect more reviews. We got more sophisticated over time where, hey, if you looked at a hotel carefully and you said, I'm going on July 13th, hey, July 15th, since you were a member, we don't know if you stayed there, but we can send an email. Did you stay at the Hotel Commonwealth? Other travelers would love to hear your thoughts. Or did you stay somewhere else? Please let them know. That sort of thing.
Very cool. So one of the topics that we're always discussing here as marketplace kind of founders and teams, as far as, when it comes to expansion and, category and geo expansion. And this is related to a topic that I wanted to discuss here, which is kind of the evolution of TripAdvisor, right? As you scaled. So could you share more about, how you thought about, category expansion and geo expansion?
Sure. When TripAdvisor was initially wonderfully successful, oh, wow, we're riding a rocket ship. So, 3-4 years into this, it was not quick. We thought, should we be the advisor for consumer electronics, for not books, Amazon's doing that, but for software, for like everything else, and take that blank advisor as the way to build. And I thought carefully about it because it was pretty tempting, but decided travel's $1 trillion plus industry. And we'll never tap out if we just stick to travel. Whereas in every industry, there was going to be some competitors. And so focus company, broad foundational company. You can be a broad foundational company, like if you own hardware, if uh, uh, if you have something that makes your offering that much more compelling when split across different verticals. But we looked closely and said, like, it's a review system. The technology is not the name of the game. And how hard is it to create a review platform for software, for consumer electronics on a separate, like, it's easy. So that wasn't going to be a competitive advantage. Whereas in travel, people go in international destinations, and your opinion on what hotel is awesome, if you're writing in English, is actually still valuable to someone who lives in Paris and might be going to that same hotel if they can read it. So, hey, there's a translation problem, but there's a huge network effect in expanding geographically. And so that's really what we did initially. We said, hey, we have all the hotels and attractions in the US, then to Europe, then to rest of world, then to 20 something different languages. And that was our method of growth for the first decade plus. Again, if people need to grow into different verticals or different areas for different reasons, is it you have to because your competitors there and you're losing sales? Is it for pure growth opportunity? But just remember, you pick up new competitors if it's a competitive space, and you detract from what you're already probably pretty good at. So if you're at a 30% market share and you don't think you can grow, absolutely. So we expanded geographically. Then we said, hey, look, Google's coming in the hotel space. That's really, really bad news because they're the only company up funnel from us. And they started to sort of take traffic that was normally coming to Tripadvisor and divert it to their own product. And we saw that as getting worse. You shore up your product, you try to differentiate, and then you think nobody wants to fight with Google. It's just a bad idea. Hey, what about attractions? That's a new category. Google's not playing there. You're kind of screwed if you're a traveler and you want to book a tour ticket. There's no good site. People go to TripAdvisor, already a major category, already had a ton of traffic, but we didn't do any booking. So we spent a couple $100 million buying Viator, which was a company doing some revenue, but not an interesting amount, no profit. They were struggling, but we had a ton of traffic as asset and believed that category would play well in the future. It's kind of the last category to come online in the travel space. So that's where we put a bunch of our effort. And then we can talk about it now or later, but we also tried to do a lot in vacation rentals because they were becoming popular, key lodging, and we failed at it. Didn't work. Nobody goes to TripAdvisor to do vacation rentals now. And we spent probably hundreds of millions of dollars acquiring our way into that space. And that was a regret. We should have just stayed away or done a pure licensing deal because we're this hotel travel experience plan your trip reviews platform that is now deciding to go head to head with Airbnb and VRBO. Really? Because we're going to have a better offering? No. Because we'll also have hotels? Yeah. We went because we thought our customers would really need to have that both selection. Turns out we convinced ourselves of that, but it's really not true. People can go to Airbnb when they want Airbnb. They go to Booking or Expedia or TripAdvisor or Kayak when they want a hotel. And people generally don't mind shopping on two different sites. Maybe the typical travel shopper shops on a lot of different sites, but it's just faulty strategic logic that says you have to address all of those consumer needs. Because we're not an airline site. We're not a train site. We don't do a lot of your travel needs. Why did we think we had to address rentals, even though customers clearly wanted the Airbnb, VRBO type product.
Yeah, as you mentioned, as far as travel being such a large opportunity, of course, there's a lot of consolidation that was happening in space as well. And you mentioned a lot of the competition. So I guess on that note, how do you just generally speaking for marketplaces think about kind of competition and defensibility?
The ultimate defensibility is having customers that love shopping on you. If it's something a little bit more sticky, because you have a network of friends there, you have loyalty points, you have something that keeps them from switching, all the better. But like in the travel space, it's a dynamic industry. We can get to it now or later, but I'll tease it as uh, the thing I didn't appreciate as a startup that I now appreciate as having run TripAdvisor in the thousands of people days is really hard for a big company to build something new. So TripAdvisor bought 30 plus other companies. Most other big companies have bought their way into new products, even Google, right? They tried to compete with Facebook. They killed that effort. They tried to compete with YouTube. They killed that effort and bought YouTube. They don't always succeed at what they try to do. And there's a huge advantage for a big company to spend absurd sums of money buying a tiny company, absurd as a revenue or EBITDA multiple, because as CEO, and this is just to get you in the head of someone that might buy your company, for me to, I know I can build whatever you've got, as much as you may think it's unique, special, blah, blah, blah. You've got a product out in the market. I can tell a team of people to copy it. Now, telling a team of people to copy it is just hand waving. I don't have a team that's available. Everyone in my company is working on something important. I have to go hire a team. I have to go find someone to lead the project. Internally, coming off of a key priority already. Externally, it's a risk. Maybe the person knows how to build stuff, maybe not. So assembling the team, it's not that it costs too much money. I'm going to pay a lot of money for this company. It's that it'll be 6 months before I'll even be up and running, or I'll have to disrupt a bunch of current priorities. For building a product, that may not work. Even if there's an example over there, it may be tough to replicate. We don't really know this new thing. Flip side, as a public company, I'm worth $1 billion, $2 billion, $5 billion, whatever the number is. For me to spend in stock, or if I'm profitable, my cash, to buy a company for $10 million, $20 million, I didn't even need board permission for acquisitions of that scale. Okay. I had to like the team. I had to like what they accomplished. What they were doing needed to fit in with where we were going. So I don't think I ever bought companies just for their EBITDA. And I needed to be able to explain to myself why it was worth the legal and accounting and the rest of hassle in bringing a new company on. But if I liked the company, they'd already built it, they'd already hired the people. As the CEO or head of product, was all the companies we bought, we wanted to keep the CEO, because that was the person I was going to be depending upon to grow this when combined with all the TripAdvisor assets, or customers, or traffic, whatever it was that made the synergies good. And I didn't, frankly, care if I was overpaying. So the number of companies that we bought for, you can call it an infinite EBITDA multiple, because they weren't making any money, dozen at least.
This is going to be incredibly helpful for founders here. So I know there are lots of questions around acquisitions a lot of times, and so it's really going to be helpful to kind of be inside of the head of the CEO at that later stage. So cool. So I know we're kind of jumping around here with some of the topics, but I did want to learn a little bit more about the difference. I would say primarily from the role of a CEO, kind of I'd say like pre-IPO to kind of if we fast forward to the later stages. So what would you say like some of the biggest differences were from those kind of those two different stages, and then maybe even learnings now looking back?
I Yeah, it's nice to be out of the public eye. You just have more flexibility again, depending on who your parent company is or your ownership structure is. The word on the street in terms of, oh, it's miserable being a public company CEO. No, it wasn't. I didn't think it was bad at all. Oh, you have to be on the road all the time talking to your investors? No, you don't. I am an existing proof point that says, nope. I would do a Boston investor conference, sometimes a New York investor conference. That was kind of it. I sent my CFO to do those. I won't say I enjoyed the earnings calls, but they were a great quarterly opportunity to take stock of your business, to think about the questions that kind of your customers as a public company, your investors are going to ask. Really get down and dig into, hey, they're going to ask about, hey, is it domestic or international? Where's the softness? Like, we should have a better answer to that because I'm not really sure. And we would dig ahead of time so that I could understand that. So, I didn't ever have to deal with a hostile takeover, that sort of thing. And I very carefully and deliberately shared with the people inside the company that we were not going to be a company that was going to pay any attention to quarterly earnings and hitting quarterly numbers. We're going to miss some. We're going to exceed some. I accept an annual report card. Like, how did we do? But if we feel we have an investment that we want to make that will hurt our earnings and pay off, and we're confident about that, or it's a good odds on the risk, I will go to the board and make that claim. And I did several times. The board said, we agree, go. Or they said, we agree, let's test it this way and then, spend the real dollars. And I've been on several boards, and like, that's the way many boards operate. I'm well aware that there are other boards that are like you'll keep your job if you hit your quarterly number. But if you're the CEO creating a board and then deciding to go public, hey, you're calling the shots. You can create the board that you want, usually. And employees did not like it when the stock price went down after a bad quarter. And I addressed it in the next company meeting. But that was it. Just didn't give it more airtime. And those companies those people that were really there to make sure their equity went up, they probably weren't joining Tripadvisor in the first place, which was fine with me. And that's kind of how I dealt with that aspect. As a public company, you have the stock to play with. If you spend your cash, if it's not a lot, Wall Street doesn't even notice. So that's another reason to do an acquisition. Like, literally, I could grow by spending $10 million to buy a company that I thought had a product that could generate a couple of million or more in the following years. If it was break even, like, super, I could spend the money and no outside investor would give a shit, truly. If they were losing money, I would have to report that EBITDA loss, consolidated basis. What did a company doing a couple hundred million? If they were losing 1 million, it just didn't matter to me. If they were losing 10, it did matter to me. So I'm like, as a startup, try not to lose money. Companies can be bought when they are losing a lot of money. Not a strategy I recommend. Uh, uh, but but yeah, I'm thumbs up on being a public company if you have the background to get there.
That's very very encouraging. So most of us here, of course, super early stage, kind of seed and Series A. So that's something that we're working towards. So,
But if any investor asks you, "Hey, do you want to go public?" The answer is not yes. That's my goal. Your goal, I'm giving you a cheat sheet to the answer. Your goal is to build a great company. Your goal is to identify a set of customers, serve them extremely well, make money and profit along the way. If it ends up being bought by a bigger company for $200 million cash, like Tripadvisor, amen. If it ends up being bought at 20 million when you raised money at 5, hey, that's a nice double for whoever your investors are. If you end up going public, great. That's a super outcome that takes longer, but I'm at least suspicious of not being aligned with the CEO as an angel investor if they say, essentially, I want to go public. And usually the CEOs are saying that because they think that's what I want to hear, but it's really not what I want to hear.
well, that's a good correction. So I appreciate it. So as I mentioned, we're going to get into the Q&A here in a little bit. But right before we do, so of course, after a incredible run at TripAdvisor, you're at it again with your next startup. So could you maybe share a little bit more about what you're building now with Give Freely?
I will. Thanks. Like I stepped down from TripAdvisor because I was doing it for 20 years. Felt I had one more startup in me. Realized after 20 years, if I didn't leave, I wasn't going to find the time to come up with the next idea. That other people can do it. I'm just too focused operationally on what I do day in, day out. So I left Trip without an idea, came up with several different ideas, like this one the best. It's called Give Freely. It's a browser extension. It's kind of a mashup between Honey or Capital One Shopping or Rakuten and Amazon Smile. And if you remember Amazon Smile, you could sign up, go to smile.amazon.com, and 0.5% of everything you bought on Amazon went to your favorite charity. You had over 1 million to pick from. So with Give Freely, you install the browser extension, and then you can forget all about Give Freely. You don't have to remember any URL or going to anywhere. But as you happen to be shopping at any of 10,000 different stores, a pop-up will appear when you put something in. This happened to me the other day. I was shopping on Staples. I needed more ink for my printer. I'm going to find the right ink, add it to my shopping cart. Boom, pop-up appears saying, hey, do you want 2.6% of this purchase to go to the MS Society, which was the charity I had chosen? Like, yes, please. Click. Done. Bought my ink. It arrived. And the MS Society got 2.6% of my $80 ink purchase. Add that to the rest of my shopping habits for the year, maybe times 20 million people. And that could be as much as 500 million or $1 billion a year going to charitable causes, nonprofits all around the world. Amazon Smile was doing 100 million a year in donations on just one store at 0.5%, and our average commission rate is closer to 3%. And now I just need 10, 20 million users. And as they say, I'm all set. Reach out to me afterwards if you have any interesting distribution ideas. Free to use, of course, givefreely.com if you want to try it yourself.
I'll make sure I share it in the not only in the notes but in the community after. So you'll probably have a lot of ideas on distribution coming your way. So it's really cool. Sounds like another such a large opportunity as far as impact as well. First travel and now this. So
I'd be happy to add this one to the proverbial tombstone. we're a sub 10 person company. I don't want to grow a big company. I have no investors. I'm able to self-fund this. There's no equity for employees. It's all about, can I generate $1 billion, which is more money than I have. Can I generate $1 billion a year towards philanthropic causes?
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. So cool. So we're going to get into questions here. Hey, Jeff, I know you added a question to the doc. Did you want to come on?
Thanks so much, Steve. Thanks for being here and sharing all your insights. Very much appreciated. I know we spoke a little bit about geo expansion and adjacent vertical expansion, and we talked a little bit about you spoke about defensibility of markets, etc. But and acquisitions of different types of businesses. But I'm curious specifically for those of us who are founders and building products and have some product market fit. If you could speak a little bit about how you've approached and how you think about things like expanding your product beyond its main use case to, when to focus in on making the narrow product as good as possible, and when is the right time to work on expanding the product to maybe fit other types of users, other types of clients, and kind of how you approach, those types of decisions and scope of product.
Excellent question. First thing I would ask is, am I actually selling to a different person, and is this good? So if the buyer, either B2C or B2B, if it's the same decision maker and I can close more of my existing evaluations or trials, again, I don't know what business particularly you're talking about, then hey, anything I can do to get my close rate up, that's probably a good investment. My customers are asking for it, so I'm going to go deliver it. If it's a different sales cycle, targeting a different person and a new person to convince, either because the functionality changed or, I don't know, it's enterprise going from one-on-one or something, think twice, because in general, sales is a massive cost. If you have to go rebuild that for a different target, yikes. I tend to prefer the share of wallet versus growth in overall customer base as the next, from your seed phase. So if you can double what you're selling to the same person, that's just way easier than finding a whole new person to sell to. Having said all that, I don't know what business you're in, so it's going to be a very careful decision. And often the answer is, hey, just stick to your guns, get twice as efficient at what you're currently doing before you expand. But that's just pattern recognition for me. Probably too vague an answer to be helpful to you, but feel free to message me afterwards with a specific.
Hey, Preeti, do you want to come on? So I use the raise hand.
Sure. Thanks, Mike. Hi, Steve. Absolutely inspirational for somebody building an IPO scale company for multi-day experiences. So look, quick context for my question is, we're building a curated marketplace for multi-day trips. Like Tripadvisor, we started with B2B the last 3-4 years, and now is when we're getting ready for B2C. And we started by hiring an SEO team, the guys who build SEO for Make My Trip early days. So my question with that context is, in today's rapidly changing world of AI search, how do you make the decisions or investing in initiatives like SEO, which it takes some time to build and see the outcome while the landscape is changing rapidly. So what's your guidance for someone like us?
Yeah, so with Give Freely, we built a charity directory. It's not fully launched for SEO, so I can tell you, actually, it got crawled pretty quick. So the notion of what I used to believe, you need to let it bake for 6 months. No, you don't. I don't think that's a difficult question. You have to say, can I create a lot of SEO pages that are genuinely helpful to a user who lands on them based upon the title of the page, which is what I'm using to advertise to them? If the answer is, yeah, I'll give a great answer to whatever this Google search question is, if only Google can find my pages, super. Now, do you use Gen AI to create a bunch of those great answers? Probably, or why not? I don't think there's anything wrong with using AI. Can't imagine Google would penalize it if it's offering something helpful to that user. So measure time on site, bounce rate super carefully, make sure your title tags and your link structure and kind of all the core vitals are right. And then there's still good room to come up with pages in the travel category, which has been picked through very carefully, if you have something good. And I would bet, 3-day trip to Machu Picchu probably has not been targeted by any of the big sites, and you might have a great set of offerings. It's a long tail term, so you need a lot. You need a page for the 2-day trip, the 3-day trip, the 4-day trip. You need, I don't know what the rest of the variations are, but like make a set of good pages, give it a whirl, and then obviously you know how to scale. You like the fact that you cover a lot of geographies. That really does help scale.
Thanks, Steve. Hey, I actually want to jump in here and ask a question for a familiar face or name, actually, Ravi, that added a question to the Google Doc in advance, Steve, which is around, Tripadvisor's value of speed wins. And he noted that, of course, most companies tend to slow down as they grow. So, how did you create and maintain a speed-oriented culture at Tripadvisor? What advantages do you think, Tripadvisor experienced as a result of being focused on speed?
So I have to break to share an amusing anecdote. I thought I would last about a year after Tripadvisor was acquired because, like, I can't work in a big company. Like, and I was, we were certainly planning to grow, and like the administrative, not my favorite part. I'm the product engineering guy. And a friend of mine said, well, if your complaint is that the company is going to slow down and you're going to be unhappy, didn't you say you were the CEO? I'm like, yeah. Like, so that's kind of your choice as to whether the company slows down or not, right? Like, but there's so many people. I'm like, take it as your challenge. Keep the company going fast. And so I like, hey, that's a pretty fair perspective. So I put a sign on the door to my office that said speed wins, because anyone coming in to talk to me about anything would have to see that sign. If I was in a remote culture, it would just be on my Zoom background. It was just speed wins. Like, I want to drive home with every single person in the company that we value going fast. And the flip side is, I'm not going to slap you if you miss a deadline. Because I used to be like most of the deadlines missed are engineering, right? I used to be an engineering manager for many, many years. When I would miss a deadline, I'd be penalized. It would be a bad thing. So I got used to padding my deadlines so I wouldn't miss them. Then I was a hero. Everyone optimizes for being a hero. So therefore, like, can't you pull that schedule in? No, because that would risk being a hero. Whereas if it's a speed wins, and like postscript to that experience at the prior company was like, and rarely did anything ship earlier than expected by more than a week or two. So we had optimized at that company accidentally for security, safety. Things took a long time to get done, but they were done on time. There was a big penalty for missing the date. At Tripadvisor, I'm like, no, there's not going to be any penalty for missing the date by a week. We didn't have external, like we had features we needed to get out. Now, work hard, work fast, make decisions that you're proud of in terms of the code, but Don't tell me it's going to take 3 months to do something that sniff, I think you can do in a month. Like it'll take 2 weeks to do the spec. No, it'll actually take 2 days to do the spec if you put the right person on it and go. Oh, well, what about usability? Great. They should hop on the train and quickly do some usability while you're speccing the rest of it out, while you've started your architectural implementation. What are you going to parallelize? Don't tell me engineering has to halt while usability goes and does some stuff. That's bullshit. So again, pressing every moment on how fast can you go, trying not to err too much on the shipping stuff that has a bunch of bugs in it, which TripAdvisor didn't do in general. Other people have a valid point of like, hey, the go fast at the expense of deciding what the right thing to do is has its risks. I agree, it does. Try to decide what the right things to do are. But when you decide what the right things to do are, just go blazingly fast. Optimize for speed, reward speed, thank people for getting it done quickly. If it's late, hey, we ran into this problem. Sorry, we didn't see it coming. It's going to take an extra week. My answer, hey, no problem. Thanks for keeping me up to date. Like new people, they were shocked that I wasn't upset. Like I asked for a super tight, I asked for not the 80% confidence. I asked for the 50% confidence state. You're not sure if you can make it. That means sometimes it's going to be later. And I'm going to reward you for giving an optimistic date, not penalizing you if I think you are truly working hard at it, which at TripAdvisors, they always were.
I'm glad he asked that question. They didn't know about the the sign with the speed win, so how to make one and have it up back here. So
the CEO can only deliver a certain number of messages when your company is over 100 people. Like, what are they known for? What do they care the most about? Are they always out networking, never walking around the building, proverbial building? Are they caring about how you are, how to make you more effective? Do they want to learn? Are they stuck in their ways? Are they stubborn? Are they open? Is your culture one of creative disagreement or yes, sir, yes, ma'am, yes, sir? Like you get choices, and so I didn't pay a lot of attention initially to spreading the culture. That maybe as much as I should have, but a couple of things stuck. One was if it's worth doing, it's worth measuring. The other is speed wins. And the third is have impact. Like anywhere you're in the company, like, is what you're doing having an impact on the business? Ask yourself those questions. And then to you guys at this stage, I stayed involved as the final round, interviewing every single person that came into the company until I couldn't do it anymore. And that was about 250 people. Like, do it. Kind of like the talent level in the company always seems to decrease. And the phrase I learned a long, long time ago is, A caliber individuals hire A caliber and B caliber. A caliber individuals hire B caliber and C caliber. And so you just end up with this nice people. TripAdvisor had a no assholes policy, and we lived up to that. We had nice people. Some were just not very good at doing something, at doing what they were doing. And as CEO, your job, number one job, is to not let those people in the company. Your number one job is not having a great performance system that gets the people out. That's your number two job. The number one job is make sure they don't get in the company in the first place. It just breeds the mediocrity. It breeds, executive tolerance for someone. People could say who's doing the job and who's not. And when the person who's just kind of not or isn't very good at it is around for several years, it sets the tone. And when you're small, you want the A team. It doesn't mean, in my opinion, when you realized you've brought on a B or a C player, that you fire them immediately. But at least you can look yourself in the mirror and say, I need this person for a bit longer. I'm going to look at replacing them. I'm going to try to mentor them up to where they need to be. But if that's not realistic, I know I don't want to have this person on my team forever. And I'm like, mentally, you put a plan around what that time frame is, and you move on. Hard, but like that, a key lesson in growing a company.
Now, these are going to be super helpful, so I really appreciate sharing with us. So we're almost out of time here, but wow, this is such a great chat. So I appreciate taking the time to join us here and kind of bounce around with some of the topics and questions as well. So I actually had one last question for you before we wrap things up, and this is my usual closing question, which is if you could go right back to before you started TripAdvisor, what would you tell yourself about marketplaces specifically?
I love the concept of marketplaces, especially like something like TripAdvisor, where I would say, I go to sleep at night and I wake up and I made more money and I didn't do anything. It was automatically going. The network effects, like if they're not obvious, because you're more of an e-commerce store than a marketplace, like focus on them because they're your barriers to entry. What would I tell myself about marketplaces? I'd have to go back to like, it's all about the people you bring in, the culture you define, and then the standard amount of luck and timing that goes into starting anything. I guess I would add, well, I'll tell you a little anecdote in my remaining minute or two, because it flows directly into advice I would have for every one of you that I've given 1,000 times before. TripAdvisor raised $1.2 million in a seed round, in February of 2000. By summer of 2000, we were pretty excited. We're getting ready to launch in the fourth quarter, and we were offered another $2 million because travel was picking up. The times were good, and we didn't have a product yet, so there's no judging of anything. But our investors got more excited about what we were doing, and the risk that I would assemble a terrible team because they invested just in me, or me and one co-founder, was addressed because I had assembled a good team. We'd kept our burn rate low. We were delivering. So some of the VC risk was removed. They offered $2 million at 2x the valuation, which was only $10 million at the time. And I'm like, I don't need the money. Why do I want to take a 20% dilution now? We're going to launch, then we'll get our B2B partners, and then we'll be off to the races. And one of our board members, Donna VC, said, Steve, when someone's offering you money, take it. The biggest reason why startups fail is not because they're bad ideas, because they didn't have a good enough money to prove that the idea would work. And then he went through this logic with me. He said, Steve, if the company sold for $100 million, and your share was 30 million, or your share was 30 million less 20%, is that going to change your life? I'm like, no, not at all. Okay. If the company runs out of money and you have to start over, is that an impact on your life? I'm like, well, yeah. Good. So let's optimize for what will prevent the bad thing from happening, or hopefully prevent the bad thing from happening. and won't bother you on the upside. So we took the money. If we hadn't taken the money, we would have run out of TripAdvisor money because nobody would have funded us if we didn't have, at that point in time, 0% chance. Why? Because the business had failed. When we launched our B2B offering, we had 0 customers. It took us a year to get a customer. By the way, a year later, when we finally did get a customer, was right around September 11th. Okay, nobody's buying anything in the travel space at that time. So there's 100% certainty we would have died if we didn't take that money. And you ask me, hey, we sold, for a great price. And did I care that it was for 20% less to me? Like, hell no. It was non-zero, which was a great answer. So, of course, you don't want to give away money, but at your stage, number one, raise as much as anyone will give you. Forget the dilution. It doesn't matter. Number two, have in mind what you need to do to get your next round of funding. Presumably, you're not going to be break even at that point. Break even is always the magic number at a startup stage. But presuming you'll need another round, what do you have to prove to the next set of investors? And it's not that I'm saying forget your North Star, but nail what you have to prove. That is the most important thing. Not any of the other things that you'll need to do to make a successful business, but put together the pitch deck to raise your next round. What do those slides have to say, and prove it while you still have some runway to do so.
Couldn't think of a better way to wrap it up here. So that's going to be super helpful parting advice, and I feel like we just had like a master class or kind of crash course on company building and startups. So I really appreciate it. And then last but not least, time for a quick plug. Where can we keep up with you at?
Feel free if you reach out to me on LinkedIn and say that for a connection and say that you were part of this, I will in the note I will accept the connection. Otherwise, it's a bunch of names, and I tend not to accept too many connections of people I really don't know. But I will accept all of you. If you use the info at Forgive Freely, or you'll reach me. We're a small company. And I remind people 9 out of the first 10 people we pitched TripAdvisor to said, thanks, but no thanks. You don't need a lot of yeses. You need just one or a couple, and persistence pays off.